Monday. That was wonderful. Wonderful. Were you the one that told me more about the Jewish food stuff? Oh, you did. Right. She made it. She was fine. Then we went and hired a private, 5 hours of and then we went on a private one in Yes. Which one? No, it's not. Oh, wow. I can't discuss that with anybody. World is in turmoil. I met a man on the road that company raised money.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
I think we can do a little better than that. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
It is so wonderful to have all of you in the sanctuary with us. It brings such joy and a renewed sense of life to our sanctuary, and for the best reason to celebrate Rabbi David Straus. And we are so glad that all of you who are at home are able to join us remotely as we join in song and prayer and tribute to an outstanding life's work in so many ways. We are going to begin in our prayer book on page 128 with the singing of Maya Hayom, How Beautiful This Day Is, page 128. As we all know, we cannot have too many things to celebrate in this life, and so we are delighted to be able to share with our families tomorrow who will be called to the Torah as B'nai Mitzvah. And so we invite first Matthew Johnston to the Bima to lead us in the candle lighting blessings found on page 120, 121.
As these Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we, by our lives, give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we, in our own day, be among those who kindle light. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. Blessed are you, Adonai our God, sovereign of the universe, who hallows us with mitzvot, commanding us to kindle the light of Shabbat.
And leading us in Kiddush this evening is Emery King, who will be called to the Torah as a bat mitzvah tomorrow evening.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu, b'shabbat kodsho, b'ahava uvratzon hinhalanu, zikaron lema'aseh b'reishit, ki hu yom tehillah lemikra'ei kodesh. Zecher litiot Mitzrayim, kivanu v'acharta, ve'atanu kidashta, mikol ha'amim, b'shabbat kodsheha, be'ahava uvratzon, hinhaltanu. Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh haShabbat.
Chaim, Mazel Tov, and Shabbat Shalom. We turn now to pages 138, 139 as we join cantor and choir in the singing of L'Chadodi, welcoming the Sabbath bride.
If you are joining us for the first time, or you have not been back since COVID began, we chant verses 1 to 5 and 9. Lecha dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekavela. Lecha dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekavela. Lecha dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekavela. Lecha dodi likrat kala. Shabbat nekavela, shamor bezachor bedibur echad, ishmiyanu el hamichad, Adonai echad, u'shemo echad, l'shemo tiferet b'mitchila. Lecha dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekavela. Dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekavela. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha, ki mekor haberacha, berosh b'kedem nesucha, sof ma'aseh b'machshava tchila. Lecha dodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nekavela. verse 5. Hitoreri, hitoreri, kivorech kumi uri, 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 shir daberi, kevod Adonai alayich nida. Lecha, lecha, dodi, lecha, dodi likrat kala, ben ishavat lekavila. Lecha, dodi likrat kala, ben ishavat lekavila. Verse 9. Boi v'shalom ateret bala, gam besimcha uvetzola, toch emunei am segulo. Boi chala, boi chala. Lecha, lecha, dodi, dodi, lecha, dodi likrat kala, ben ishavat lekavila. Lecha, dodi likrat kala, ben ishavat lekavila. We turn now to page 146 and rise for the call to worship, the Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach, Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed.
We continue by turning the page for our prayer of creation, and we are honored and delighted to have joining with us many of Rabbi Straus's colleagues and friends, and we are especially delighted to have Reverend Cindy Jarvis with us and to lead us in our prayer of creation.
Let us pray. This is an hour of change. Within it we stand uncertain on the border of light. Shall we draw back or cross over? Where shall our hearts turn? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over? This is the hour of change, and within it we stand quietly on the border of light. What lies before us? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over?
Baruch atah Adonai Hama'ariv Aravim. Ahavat olam beit Yisrael, Torah u'mitzvot,
Page 157. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands, marching together.
ודרני את יעקב, וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו, ברוך אתה אדוני גאה ישראל.
Page 161.
If you're looking for the text of the English, it's on 161, like Rabbi Clement said. The Hebrew is on 160. And this particular setting of Hashkivenu is simple. There's something about it that's really open. And we allow ourselves to be open to change, to asking for a sukkah of peace, asking for something better, something pretty similar to the work that Rabbi Straus has done, the work that he has championed in his work in the field of interfaith relations and in his work with Israel. So we look at those words and we ask that there should be love and understanding amongst us so that tomorrow we might wake up to a better day.
Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms.
Let there be love.
Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms.
Hashkivenu.
Hashkivenu, Adonai Eloheinu. Hashkivenu leshalom. V'ha'amidenu shomrenu lechaim. Ufro
as we pray for God's sheltering presence to be with us here in our sanctuary this evening and to shelter us as we depart, we take a moment now and ask for God's blessing of healing, the blessing of healing of mind, of body, of spirit. We pray for all of those who are caring for our loved ones and our community members. And on this Shabbat, we think in particularly of these members of our congregation as we recite Mishaberach, which can be found on page 371. Elisa bat Victoria, Eliyahu ben Moshe, Sarah bat Eli Vishulamit, Victoria bat Sarah, Stephen Cohen, Pearl Corson, Jerry Dubnoff, Gordon Fink, Sylvia Goldberg, Victoria Sedman Hales, Sarah Hetznecker Sheehan, Hannah Leese, Harvey Licht, Diane Marks, David Rosenberg, Sarah Rosenberg, Gary Schloss, Cindy Spector, Edith Witt, Yulia Millman.
The words from Mishaberach can be found on page 371.
If you can comfortably do so, we rise together for tefillah and turn to page 164.
Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi yagi tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei avotenu ve'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzhak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el HaGadol, HaGibor VeHaNorah, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Ve'konei HaKol, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם למען שמו באהבה מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן ברוך אתה אדוני מגן אברהם לעזרת שרה אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני מחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע מוריד הטל מחכה חיים בחסד מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים סומך נופלים לרופא חולים ומתיר אסור משני עפר, מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומי דומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישוע, ונאמן אתה להחיות הכל, ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי הכל. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה, ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש.
You may be seated. We continue on the top of page 173. Together, may these hours of rest and renewal open our hearts to joy and our minds to truth. May all who struggle find rest on this day. May all who suffer find solace. May all who hurt find healing on this day. May all who despair find purpose. May all who hunger find fulfillment on this day. And may this day fulfill its promise. Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat.
We have so much to be grateful for. We turn to the top of page 177 to join in our expression of gratitude. God of goodness, we give thanks for the gift of life, wonder beyond words, for the awareness of soul, our light within, for the world around us so filled with beauty. for the richness of the earth which day by day sustains us. For all these and more we offer thanks. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha ulecha na'eh lehodot. In just a moment, we will turn to our prayer for peace, but before we do, it's my pleasure to invite to the Bima to share a few words of reflection and appreciation one of our past presidents, Ed Kane.
Shabbat Shalom. As we refer to some of us as past presidents, I am number 20. What does 24 mean? Eric, please answer. Every past president from the inception of the congregation, starting with number 1, has a number. I am therefore number 24. I was also Rabbi Straus's first congregational president. We change presidencies April 1st. Sometimes that's appropriate. Every year, normally you serve 2 years. And so when I took over in April of, I think it was 1998, Rabbi Straus joined us that summer. So I had the distinction, the honor of being his first congregational president. It wasn't easy for me, it wasn't easy for him. I was busy traveling for business around the world. It was not unusual for us to have discussions at 11 or 12 Philadelphia time, which was whatever time it was for me wherever I was. But I want to talk to you very briefly about what he is as an individual. The word mensch was created and talking about Rabbi Straus, without question. And I'm going to give a brief story, very brief, because I promised that I would. My wife had become very ill, and my wife was at Penn Hospital, downtown, and that weekend was Max Strauss's bar mitzvah. Do you remember this? And we're in the room that Saturday afternoon, and the door opens, and this was Max's weekend. This was Lynn's weekend. This was David's weekend. Yes, I did call him David. We were that close. The door opens. It is Rabbi Straus. And I'm looking at him. I was supposed to give remarks during your bar mitzvah. I could not do that. I wasn't there. And in he walks. I'm looking at him. Why are you here? I have an ill congregant in the hospital and I want to visit. But this is your weekend. No, this is for the congregant. And he had given up time to be with his family to come and see Jill. And Jill, by the way, is number 30. I only know this because I looked it up yesterday. This is the type of individual that he is. This is the type of individual that cares for the congregation, that cares for us. You're retiring, you're going on, we will miss you. Do you have a moment, please? Can you come up here and share the bima with me? From the Board of Trustees, I'm honored to give you this tzedakah box that you can remember, and it will forever remind you of your tenure with us. There will be a plate that will go with this. It's not here this evening. I want to say thank you. I want to say, yep. And you can give your remarks later.
Thank you, Ed. And the engraving that will accompany this tzedakah box is a quote from Pirkei Avot, the Ethics of Our Fathers. And it is, I think, a relatively well-known one, but it is quite beautiful and most appropriate. The more Torah, the more life. The more sitting in the company of scholars, the more wisdom. The more counsel, the more understanding. The more charity, the more peace. And so it is that we pray for peace with the singing of Shalom Rav found on page 178.
Shalom Rav Yisrael Alta Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Alta Tasim Leolam. Ki ata melech adon lechol hashalom.
Take a moment now for personal prayers and reflections.
May the
So it is my honor now to welcome to Mayline Reform Temple my rabbi, my friend, my colleague, my mentor, Rabbi Jonah Dov Pesner. Rabbi Pesner serves as the director of the Religious Action Center of Reform Judaism in Washington, D.C. He's led the Religious Action Center since 2015. He also serves as the senior vice president of the Union for Reform Judaism, a position to which he was appointed in 2011. Rabbi Pesner's work has focused on encouraging Jewish communities to reach across lines of race, class, faith, and the campaign for social justice. I think you can see why he is my friend, my mentor, and my inspiration. In 2006, he founded Just Congregations, now incorporated into the work of the RAC, which engaged clergy, professional, and volunteer leaders in interfaith efforts in the pursuit of social justice. Rabbi Pesner was a primary leader in the successful Massachusetts campaign for health care access that has provided health coverage to hundreds of thousands and which became a national model for health care reform. Over the course of his career, he has also led and supported campaigns for racial justice, economic opportunity, immigration reform, LGBTQ equality, human rights, and a variety of other causes. He is dedicated to building bridges to collectively confront anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and other forms of bigotry and hatred. Ordained at HUC in 1997, he was previously a congregational rabbi at Temple Israel in Boston and at Temple Israel in Westport, Connecticut. A graduate of Wesleyan University and the Bronx High School for Science. He's married to Dana Gershon, an attorney, and they have 4 daughters. And being a good rabbi, he didn't get to see his daughter row in the last race this afternoon of the Stotesbury Regatta. And being an even better husband, I'm grateful that his anniversary is tomorrow night and not tonight. Rabbi Pesner.
Shabbat Shalom. Can you hear me okay? Okay. I want to take a moment before I express my gratitude and humility to honor Rabbi David Straus by pausing to just allow Ed Kane's incredible testimonial about the mensch who has led you for 24 years to live and sit with you. Let that story of sitting by his wife's bedside resonate and echo. And I want to invite you all to take a moment and think about how this mensch and rabbi impacted your life. Picture a time when he danced with you, or studied with you, or prayed with you. Think about a time when he challenged you or simply held you. There is no greater honor than speaking in the celebration of the rabbinate of a mensch like David Straus. Max and Julia and Lynn, I'm honored to share this with you, and I wish you all the best now that he's available for lunch. We'll see, Lynn, whether 37 years of marriage can withstand that. We'll see. To Rabbis Newberg and Kleiman and Cantor Rudnick, that was a spectacular and beautiful service, and abundantly clear that going forward, Rabbi Straus's legacy will only be to grow and flourish with the leaders who will guide you forth. As I begin some words in celebration and praise of Rabbi Straus, I also want to acknowledge the presence of 2 of my professional colleagues at the Union for Reform Judaism, Rachel Beck, who is the organizer of RAC Pennsylvania, which is near and dear to Rabbi Straus's heart, and I hope to many of your hearts, because he is one of the co-chairs of RAC Pennsylvania, who brought Rachel to organize you and thousands of your fellow Reform Jews to work across lines to transform Pennsylvania from, let's just say, the land of justice opportunity to the land, overflowing with justice for all people. And of course, as I've come to know her in this house, MJ is here. Melissa Johnson, who is a sacred partner in the work at the Union for Reform Judaism, but formerly your executive director. So it's an honor I offer these words on behalf of my colleagues as well. It seems ideal, Rabbi Straus, that we're honoring you and celebrating you during the period of Sfirat HaOmer, the counting of the Omer, that incredibly sacred time where we have the exodus from Egypt behind us and the possibility of standing before Sinai in front of us. These are the days when we read Pirkei Avot, so it's perfect that Rabbi Newberg read the words of the tzedakah box, taken from Pirkei Avot, the ethics of our fathers, when we, still fresh from the experience of having been slaves, having been oppressed, having been in bondage, after hundreds and hundreds of years, our ancestors who rose up out of their oppression and were able to have the courage to march forth towards the promised land. And we count these days because we understand that our liberation didn't happen simply when we were free from the bondage of our slavery, but when we had the freedom to enter into the covenant of standing at Mount Sinai and receiving our Torah. Because Rabbi Straus, who dedicated his career to building this community in this sacred space with the Torah scrolls received some 5,000 years ago as we stood together at Sinai, that contain the wisdom of our people, and in the parak that we read earlier, the study of which leads to shalom, to wholeness, to peace. He devoted his life and his career to inviting you all in to that sacred space, to be inspired and guided and grounded and find joy in those words of Torah, to build a Jewish community of learning and celebration together. But that's not all who Rabbi Straus is about. Though he is a great rabbi and a great teacher and built a religious education program here with you that inspired countless number of people to engage in Jewish life, he also understood that Torah is a call to action, not just to be better humans and to live in community together, but to see the greater world, to be as concerned with West Philadelphia as with the main line. And that is why he balanced his time teaching and engaging with you to bring you in to interfaith conversations in the broader community, through the JCRC, through the various other interfaith networks that he led, and across greater Philadelphia and into Pennsylvania, so that we as Jews could show up in the tradition of Micah before us, who said, we know what we are obligated to do, what the Torah teaches us. That is only to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with God. That's why on so many nights when Rabbi Straus could have, at the end of a board meeting or at the end of Hebrew school, gone home and relaxed, he went to some interfaith clergy meeting, interfaith coalition meeting, a community meeting, to show up representing and leading Jews into a space to work together for justice. But that's not all he knew. Rabbi Straus understands, in the context of 5,000 years, not only of the receiving of Torah, but often painful and violent anti-Semitism, of oppression that we have experienced throughout history as Jews. He understands that our safety as a community comes through our relationship and our connection to the broader community. That our safety is actually in our solidarity. So the interfaith work that he dedicated his life to, the awards that he's received from the communities that he's led, were both because he understands the importance of showing up and doing justice together, and the way in which that protects us as Jews. You, Rabbi Straus, march in the footsteps of those who came before you, but in particular, the founders of the Religious Action Center of Reform Judaism, which I'm honored to lead, are founders who 60 years ago, during the Civil Rights Movement, very much understood that same kernel that Rabbi Straus embodied throughout his career and taught and preached and modeled. Our founder was a Reform Jew named Kivi Kaplan. How many of you know the name Kivi Kaplan? How many of you have never heard of Kivi Kaplan? You're not going to forget this name, okay? He was a Reform Jew just like you. He was the child of immigrants who came here with nothing. He worked hard, was a successful businessman, made a lot of money, and became a very active philanthropist. He was the president of his synagogue. He became a national trustee of the Reformed Jewish movement. And his philanthropy was defined by the experience he had as a young person on his honeymoon in Florida. He and his wife Emily were living in Boston, Massachusetts, and they traveled down to Florida for their honeymoon. And everywhere they went, they encountered a sign they had never seen before. No Jews, no dogs. Emily and Kivi were being driven around this community by an African-American taxi driver. And famously, Kivi turned to the driver and said, "Is this common down here? Like, what is this?" Incredulous. And the black taxi driver looked at Kivi Kaplan and said, "They don't even bother with us." Kivi was so agitated and inspired that when he returned home, he became very involved in the NAACP. He became so involved that by the time of his retirement in the mid-1970s, he was the last white Jewish president of the NAACP, which was, in its origins, though it is now the largest and most historic civil rights movement or organization in America, was a coalition largely of white Christians and white Jews and African-American Christians. Kivi also bought an embassy-sized building in Washington, D.C., and gave it to us, the Reformed Jewish movement, our offices in Washington. But he had one stipulation. He said, "You can have this gift, but you have to provide it as a hub for the civil rights movement." Remember, in the 1950s, it's not as though Dr. King had an office in Washington until the Religious Action Center was born. And our first director, Rabbi Dick Hirsch, called his dear friend, Martin Luther King, and said, "You now have an office in Washington," and convened the Leadership Conference for Civil Rights, the organizing arm of the civil rights community that lived in our offices for decades. That's why it was that in the conference room of the Religious Action Center of Reformed Judaism in Washington, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965 were drafted. The two most important pieces of civil rights legislation in American history were drafted in the conference room of our Religious Action Center of Reformed Judaism. Why? Because Kivi Kaplan understood, no Jews, no dogs, they don't even bother with us. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. That none of us are free until all of us are free. That our liberation is bound up in the liberation of all people. That's the legacy of our Reformed Jewish movement that David Straus marches in the spirit of by building one relationship at a time across lines of faith and class and race to build the multiracial interfaith democracy that we can be, where all people can flourish and breathe. And I need to share with you, over the course of Rabbi Straus's career, there's been a bit of evolution in this beloved country that we love and the democracy. The Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act were passed by overwhelming bipartisan majorities. They were reauthorized into law, the Voting Rights Act, by presidents whose names were like Bush and Reagan, in addition to Clinton and Carter. There was a time in our country when there was a broad bipartisan consensus around civil rights. I don't need to tell you what you have witnessed over the last 5 years, but I will name a few highlights, all to underscore the importance of the work that Rabbi Straus has been building, which is a call to action for us to continue. His retirement, means he's going to be even busier than he was before, because he's not leaving this work. We need him in Rack, Pennsylvania. We need him in West Philadelphia and in the Main Line. We need him in the Reformed Jewish movement globally. But we can't have him alone. We need him with you showing up with him. And why? Just a few highlights. Shelby v. Holder, Supreme Court ruling, 2013. Shelby v. Holder. It was the ruling that in essence eviscerated the beloved Voting Rights Act that was written in our conference room. So it's personal to us. It was a 5-4 decision in which, in essence, the logic of the majority, Chief Justice writing for the majority, Roberts, said, in essence, things are better now. And so they eliminated preclearance, which was the requirement that if any state was going to change its voting laws that had a history of voter suppression or racism, they would have to clear them with the Department of Justice. Justice Roberts, writing the majority, said, in essence, things are better now. We don't need that anymore. We don't really need the Voting Rights Act. To which, God bless Ruth Bader Ginsburg, her memory for a blessing, in the withering dissent. How many of you have read that dissent? If you want to have fun, go online later and read it. She analogized the majority's opinion by saying that's a lot like standing in a rainstorm underneath an umbrella and saying, gee, I don't need an umbrella anymore because I'm not getting wet. And they tossed away the protection of the Voting Rights Act, and what did we start to see in 2016, 2018, and culminating in 2020? State after state after state passed voter suppression laws targeted at communities of color, low-income communities, young voters, older homebound voters. One of these laws, passed in North Carolina, was called by a federal appeals court racist with surgical precision. This is all in the context of an attempt in 2016, or I think early 2017, somebody will remind me the exact date, to remove a monument to the Confederacy. The last vestiges of the Confederacy in our country. And a bunch of goons carrying tiki torches in a Unite the Right rally chant, Jews will not replace us. There is a straight line from the threats. That, by the way, the Shabbat morning of that rally, our sister congregation, Beth Israel, in Charlottesville, actually had 3 armed goons outside with AK-47 assault rifles. We knew then what was possible, and we've only seen it play out. Squirrel Hill, Tree of Life Synagogue. Mother Emanuel Church in Charleston, South Carolina, where black worshipers murdered. And of course, straight through to the shooting in Buffalo, New York, where 10 of our family, targeted because they are black, by a white supremacist, radicalized, 18 years old, only 14, when they chanted, Jews will not replace us, but has become radicalized and convinced in the great replacement lie, the lie that the Jews are turning America black, brown, and Muslim. It would be funny if our people weren't dying. Our black folk, our brown folk, our white folk who are Jewish, and our Muslim are dying. The suppression of voting rights, the attempt to hijack democracy, is interrelated with the vestiges of white supremacy, that Confederate statue that refuses to be taken down. Look no further than the assault on our nation's capital on January 6th. What did we see? Confederate flag-waving, white supremacist, anti-black racists who had Camp Auschwitz t-shirts. It was 60 years ago that Kivi Kaplan gave us the gift of the Religious Action Center because he understood that our safety is in our solidarity and that our redemption as a nation, the possibility of a nation that can overcome 400 years of racism, that can overcome the intersectional oppression that impacts all of us through our democracy. However imperfect our democracy has been, the possibility that democracy, one in which every vote is counted and means that every voice is heard, if we actually had the multiracial interfaith democracy that we believe in, our redemption may yet come and we could live safely and freely. Rabbi Straus devoted his life to this work. It shows up most essentially right here in Pennsylvania. Some of you have been involved in the work the RAC has done right here. You just had a great victory. Hope is not all lost. I don't want to only be negative and sad. I want to actually give you something to be happy about. You won the redistricting fight, the gerrymandering fight. And many of your folks in the congregation and in the other Reform synagogues joined together with people across lines. And together, you made a demand that our democracy ought to look like the people of our community. And you've made a commitment for the 2022 midterm elections that every voice will be heard when every vote is counted. You'll join together with the One PA coalition, as you've been with, I think it's called the Keystone Coalition. Rachel, you're going to have to help me later. I think I'm getting this kind of right enough, right? In order to have our values as a Jewish community and as a broader interfaith community live and breathe. As I come to a close, one other reflection. That nostalgic time of the civil rights movement, when we think about my predecessor, Rabbi Dick Hirsch, who marched across the Edmund Pettus Bridge with Dr. King and John Lewis and Al Vorspan, represented a false binary in our community. Part of the racial reckoning that we are going through as a nation, a racial reckoning that began with the cries of Tamir Rice and Freddie Gray and Michael Brown and Sandra Bland, and so many more, and then echoed across Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor, and of course, George Floyd. Call us to a racial reckoning, not only of the systems of white supremacy and racism across our country, but a reckoning within the Reformed Jewish movement. There was a time when we thought of white Jews showing up with black Christians, like I described in the NAACP of its origins. 15% of the American Jewish community is not white. We are black Jews, we are brown Jews, we are Asian Jews, we are Latino Jews, we are Jews of all hues. We are the multiracial America in which we live. And yet, too often, our congregations, our communities, and our camps look very, very white, despite the multiracial reality of our people, which means that even within, we have a racism problem. Our racism problem is not something that's happening out there in the America that isn't in here. We're all complicit and all need to be part of understanding how we as individuals, especially those of us who are white Jews, can be part of dismantling not only the systems of racism, the voting suppression, the white supremacy out there in policy, but also to ask the hard and agitational questions about how we actually become anti-racist, inclusive, and equitable within here, right here. Rabbi Straus, you have been stern, you have been resolute in leading us in interfaith and multiracial relationships that have enabled you to have hard conversations with people in your community and beyond when we experience anti-Semitism or oppression. And you have called us all to action to be our best selves as we go forward out into the broader world. So our prayer on this Shabbat, as we have behind us the oppression and the bondage of Egypt, but we know in front of us the opportunity to seize that Torah and to receive it at Sinai. It's to take that Torah, to study it, to turn it, to engage it, but then as you have David Straus, carry it forth into the sanctuary, a sanctuary of learning and celebration, and then out onto the streets. Sometimes in protest, as we speak truth to power, sometimes in interfaith learning to bring people into deeper understanding of who the Jews are and what we care about, and sometimes because it is through the light of Torah that we can all experience the light of justice. Dr. King famously said, "Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. And hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that." Yours has been a rabbinate of love and inclusion, and let us all be inspired as we go forward with that. And one last thing that I want to announce tonight. There is so much love for Rabbi David Straus. Your clergy colleagues in Rack, Pennsylvania, read by, I know, Rabbi Beth Kalish, and there are a few other rabbis, I shouldn't name names, but a whole bunch of rabbis, organize a tzedakah fundraising drive to give a gift to Rack, Pennsylvania, to support your work across Pennsylvania in honor of Rabbi David Straus. And it first The number was related to 24, celebrating your 24 years in the rabbinate with some zeros afterwards, but they were so successful that now the number is over 39, celebrating your 39 plus years in the rabbinate. So mazel tov to you on behalf of all of the rabbis and clergy colleagues that you have in Pennsylvania. And thank you for being the exemplar for justice. Friends, will you join me in celebrating Rabbi David Straus?
Thank you. Thank you all very much. Please. I'm glad that Rabbi Steinbrink reminded me at the beginning of the evening that only 40% of what they're going to say is really true. But thank you. So I want to thank Rabbi Pesner, Ed Kane, my colleagues, our beautiful choir, for your kind and gracious words and this beautiful evening. I'm honored to have you as my colleagues and to be able to call each of you my friend. And I want to thank all of you, those of you here in the sanctuary and those who are online joining tonight, for letting me be your rabbi for these many, many years. What does it mean to be a pulpit rabbi? A rabbi gets to laugh, to cry, rejoice and despair perhaps more than anyone else. I've shared with you sleepless nights and worried days. You've welcomed me into your homes and your hearts. I've smiled with you when you rejoiced, welcomed with you the gift of new life, and watched your children and grandchildren grow up. I shed the sweet tears of joy with you that, in the words of Rabbi Jeff Salkin, water the letters of Torah as we have stood here together and your children became bar and bat mitzvah, navigating that subliminal boundary between childhood and adolescence. We've stood together under the chuppah, watching the chain of life go on from generation to generation. And I've watched friends grow old and frail and bid them a loving goodbye as I accompanied them and you to their final resting place. I've experienced with you the ephemerality of life and come to learn how precious life is, how the choices we make really do matter. And I hope I've taught you that Judaism really isn't for kids alone. It offers us a value set and rituals and language and deep traditions and community and a profound narrative that can allow us to live our all too short lives with purpose and meaning and intentionality. You've enriched my life in innumerable ways, and I've surely received more than I've given. You've allowed me to share the most intimate moments of your lives. Your blessings have enfolded me, reminding me of the privilege that was bestowed upon me on my ordination, to be called a moreh and a rav, a rabbi and a teacher, titles I hope I've never taken for granted. You've allowed me to pursue my passions that sometimes fall outside the four walls of this community. You've allowed me to assume leadership roles in our community, both Jewish and multi-faith, and I hope you have been proud of the work that I've been able to do. This now is a time of transition for me and for you. I'm retiring. I will soon become your Rabbi Emeritus. But please remember, I'm retiring, not dying. I look forward to a time now to read without thinking of how it will be the basis of a sermon or a class, to make plans that don't have to be changed at the last moment. I hope to set aside time to continue to study and learn, to travel with Lynn, to spend weekends with Max and Julia and Britt. I will be grateful for the time free of the pressure that fill long days and weeks and months with a myriad of challenges and responsibilities. I hope to continue to find places to teach to be involved with the work that has most animated me and I hope excited you, working together to mend our all too broken world, be it with RAC PA or the JCRC or our own Tikkun Olam network, continue my multi-faith work here in Philadelphia and in the country and maybe even around the world. This will always be our synagogue and our spiritual home, but I look forward now to sitting with you in the pews and not on the pulpit. I look forward to new adventures and projects that I'm sure I cannot now imagine, but hope will come. You know, a rabbi doesn't work alone. I'm grateful for the incredible team I've been blessed to work with and lead during these years at MLRT. Fellow clergy, educators, executive directors, youth leaders, teachers, musicians, our support staff, and our maintenance staff. A special shout out tonight to Andy Heller. Andy's been at more services that I have led over these years than any of you. We pray for him for refuah shlema, renewed health, strength, and vigor, and a speedy recovery from his touch of COVID. To the lay leaders of this congregation who were my partners in confidence and who helped in this holy task of leading this community, and to my family, to Max and Julia who grew up here. I know it's not always easy to be an RK, and I know as well that you didn't choose this. But I hope you always know that, as Julia wrote in her college essay, you have a lot of people here who are really looking out for you and who really do love you. And to Lynn, thank you for your endless support, your encouragement. You're encouraging me to think outside the box, and then you're sometimes reminding me in the morning, what were you thinking? For your helping to edit my high holiday sermons. I'll bet all of you wish she had edited a bit more and would have wanted her to edit tonight's. For being my partner in this sacred work, for teaching with me in our child parent class, for your bringing and organizing WePAC to MLRT. I know there were times when we had plans that had to be canceled, when I could not attend family gatherings. Thank you for understanding. I know that when that phone rang at 8 in the morning, it was usually not to bring good news, and this affected you as it did me. Thank you for your patience and your understanding, and for being my partner over these many, many years. I want to end with a word of Torah. And if some of this sounds familiar to some of you, it's because I shared some of this in my Kol Nidre sermon of 2014. This Shabbat we read the penultimate parsha in the book of Leviticus, Bahar. It's about the sabbatical and jubilee year. We're taught that we are but sojourners upon this earth, that the earth really belongs to God, that you might buy land, but it's never fully your property. It's an important reminder of what is real and what is not, of what really matters in life. That Judaism is about the sanctification of time and relationships, not about acquiring and owning. And it is a truly radical call for economic justice. And it reaches its climax with these words: proclaim liberty throughout the land to all the inhabitants thereof. And it is these words that are inscribed on a bell not far from here, the Liberty Bell. And now for the story that I shared once before on this verse and this bell. It's a story that Lynn's Uncle Rashi and his brother Label shared every year at the family Seder. It's a true story, as true as most stories are, that was first told, I think, by Label and Rashi's father, Isaac, who was a Yiddish and Jewish history teacher here for many years at Dropsy College, recounted first in his book on the history of the Jews of Baltimore. And this is the story that Isaac writes. When I was a little boy of 9 in a faraway place called Benderi, my half-old blind teacher, Reb Chaim, once spoke as if he were reciting a legend. It's told, he said, that far, far away, there's a land called America. And I know that that is so. It's also told that in that land there is a city named Philadelphia, and I have no reason to doubt that. And I've heard that in that city there is a huge bell, and on that bell are engraved words from our book, the book of Leviticus, proclaim liberty throughout the land to all the inhabitants thereof. And these words are the law of the land. Now, I can imagine such a law, but I can't really believe that with liberty unto all the inhabitants, even Jews. Still, they say it is so. So children, when you grow up, you may go to America and even to Philadelphia. And if you do, see whether there is such a bell and such a law, and if it is really so. And send some of America back to Benderi. We so badly need it. Years later, in 1923, Rashi and Label's father and mother came to America, to Philadelphia. And there in Independence Hall, just a few miles from here, they found the bell that Label and Rashi's father's Rebbe had spoken about. They saw the words from Leviticus on what we call the Liberty Bell, and they saw that the bell had a very large crack. And as they lived in America, they learned that there was a big crack in the quotation. The bill had not proclaimed liberty throughout all the land, to all the inhabitants thereof. When it was rung in the early days of the Republic, it took almost a century before slavery was abolished. Nor did emancipation mean that liberty had been proclaimed for all. And that was true even by the 1920s, when their parents first saw the bell. The 1920s, after all, were days of the Ku Klux Klan and lynchings, of poll taxes and economic injustice, of union busting and red scares and the enactment of discriminatory immigration laws, a time when universities had quotas and signs, no Jews, blacks, or dogs allowed. And so, believing that America is more than a huge piece of real estate bordered by the Atlantic and Pacific, Mexico and Canada, but that America is also an idea, they went to work to make the bell whole again, to repair America. They became bell menders. Rashi continued, if you go to Independence Hall, you can see that the bell still remains cracked and needs repairing. If you look around the land, you can see that liberty has not yet been proclaimed unto all the inhabitants thereof. Worse still, we have in some ways been moving backward. Think of the assaults on economic liberty and justice, on unions and collective bargaining, the fraying of the nation's safety nets, the widening disparities in income and wealth, the unfair tax code. Think of the treatment of undocumented individuals and the assaults on legal precedents that enhance freedom. Think of how, as Rabbi Pessner shared, replacement theory and anti-critical race theory have become acceptable and allowed to enter the mainstream conversation and discourse. Think of the epidemic of gun violence that affects our city. Think of all of the battles for justice that we thought we had won and now need to be fought again. The gap between where we are and where we might be, between reality and the American idea and ideal, is growing. And so all of us need to become bell menders. Many hands have worked at filling liberty's crack. They did so 160 years ago during the Civil War, and 80 years ago during the Great Depression, and 60 years ago during the Civil Rights struggle. Now it's our turn to apply the lesson. One doesn't achieve freedom by oneself, some kind of solo bell mender. Liberty cannot be proclaimed in the privacy of your living room. The words must come from many, many throats speaking together. It's not enough to talk the talk or even walk the walk. That's something you do alone. Rather, together we have to march the march. Rashi concluded, I tell my father Isaac's story at our family Seder, and I share it with you tonight so that all of us will know how important it is to join our local chapter of the International Union of Bell Menders and Bell Guardians, persons of all shapes and sizes, genders and lifestyles, religions and colors, who will work together to proclaim liberty throughout all the land, to all the inhabitants thereof, and to carry some of it back to the many Benderis they came from. Even so, no matter how much we fix the bell, it will never be completely whole. There'll always be a Benderi somewhere, and not only in some far-off places. This week's Banderi was in Buffalo, where black people were shot and targeted, and in Washington, where people marched for the right to choose, and in Ukraine, where people are fighting for liberty, and the list goes on. That's why we always need to tell this story, so that our children and our grandchildren and we ourselves will know and remember to work together to proclaim liberty throughout the land unto all the inhabitants thereof. My friends, I hope this is some of what I've taught you and led you and modeled for you as your rabbi. That's how we end every service. Bayom Hahu, on that day, the world will be one. On that day, the vision of our prophets will be made real. But until that day comes, we need to march together as bell menders. I hope I've taught you that the goal of a Jewish life is to leave the world a better place for having lived in it, to help bring our world one moment closer to redemption, and to live a life with purpose and meaning and sensitivity, to live a life knowing that we are each created in the divine image, to strive to be an ethical human being, to grow, to be challenged, and to know how to respond. May we be blessed to continue this learning and this work together. Thank you.
Rabbi Straus, one of the many gifts that you brought with you was Lynn. And she's very good at whispering in our ears and reminding us of things. And so we present an anthem to your words in hopes that we can strive and reach to proclaim that justice and liberty and one day be able to ring that bell.
Before we ring the bells, we have to continue with our service. But we continue with a prayer that Rabbi Straus just referenced, the Aleinu. And so this is good preparation for the work that lies ahead. We rise as a congregation, page 586 for Aleinu.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמענו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים מודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא, ונאמר לאדוני מלך המקום הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
Please be seated. When cherished ties are broken and the chain of love is shattered, only trust and the strength of faith can lighten the heaviness of the heart. At times, the pain of separation seems more than we can bear. But if we dwell too long on our loss, we embitter our hearts and harm ourselves and those about us. The psalmist said that in his affliction he learned the law of God. And in truth, grief is a great teacher when it sends us back to serve and bless the living. We learn how to counsel and comfort those who, like ourselves, are bowed with sorrow. We learn when to keep silent in their presence and when a word will assure them of our love and concern. Thus, even when they are gone, the departed are with us, moving us to live as in their higher moments they themselves wish to live. We remember them now. They live in our hearts. They are an abiding blessing. We take a moment now to remember our loved ones who died in most recent days, for whom we are in the period of Shloshim, as we remember Selma Chazanoff and Selma Davis. And we remember with love those we lost at this season in years past, as we honor the memories of Sonia Mary Alterman, Ruth Aldschul, Anna Auerbach, Edna Axelbund, Pauline Banks, Marvin Barsky, Robert Berman, Nancy Lovich Bleeden, Jack I. Blum, Edward A. Bobrov, Dorothy Borko, Harold Cohen, Shirley Cohen, Harry Davidoff, Frida Don, Sylvia Dubin, Jerry Farber, the Honorable Murray B. Felton, Ethel Frank, Eva Frank, Alex Frank. And we remember Marilyn Gard, Edward Gartner, Judy Ginsburg, Donald Goodman, Estelle Goodman, Sophie Gordon, Thelma Grant, Herbert Greenspan, Estelle Gross, Julius Haas, Millard Handelman, Abraham L. Jasner, Edward Kahn, Ellie Kaiser, Mary Kosova, Nathan Kravis, Ruth Lex, Bryant Lur, Tilly Cohen Leon, Elizabeth Wolowitz Levikoff, Leonard Levitt, Alex Malamut, Philip Marshall, Joseph Melgan. Remember N. Peter Morris, Martin Moscow, Dorothy Robbins, Rose Rose, Edith B. Rose, Lawrence P. Ross, Irma Schimmel, Faye Abram Schultz, Mark Shohat, Rose Simon, Winifred Silman Skversky, Milton Seuferman, Carolyn Steinbrink, Faye Strime, Milton Sussman, Anna Trachtenberg, Frank Waxman, Irene Waxman, Edith Weinstein, Judy Weiss, Gary Weissman, Bernard D. Weiland. Zichronam Livracha. May all of their memories be an eternal blessing as we turn to page 598 and rise to praise God's name with the words of the Mourner's Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitkadash Shemei Rabbah, v'yalma divrach chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayachon v'yumechon v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael, v'agala v'zman kari v'imru, Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam olamei almaya, v'yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yithalal shemei d'kudsha b'richu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tishbechata v'nechamata, damiran v'alma v'imru, Amen. Yehei Shlama Rabba min Shemaya, v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru, Amen. Osei shalom b'mromav, hu ya'asei shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru, Amen. May the Holy Blessed One who creates harmony on high bring peace to us, to all Israel, and to all the world, and together we say, Amen. You may be seated. It is my great pleasure to welcome to the Bima the President of our Board of Trustees, Jamie Mushlin.
Shabbat Shalom. What a joy it is for me to look out and see so many familiar faces, and to everyone joining us online, we can feel your love and support in the sanctuary this Shabbat. A sincere and heartfelt thank you to Rabbi Straus for his wonderful 24 years of service, and the filling of this room is certainly a testament to the love and impact that you've had on all of us. Additionally, I'd like to thank Rabbi Pesner, Reverend Jarvis, Ed Kane, Rabbi Newberg, Cantor Rudnick, and Rabbi Kleinman and the choir for creating a beautiful and inspirational service for us this evening. And a special thank you to Julia B. and you know I can't say it, and Michael Sobel for accompanying our choir tonight. I'd like to call your attention to some very exciting upcoming programs and special events. Please join Rabbi Straus 9 a.m. tomorrow for Torah study, followed by our Shabbat morning service. Both Torah study and services will be available in person and on Zoom. Tomorrow night at 6:30, please join Cantor Rudnick and her family for Havdalah with the Rudnicks. This program is Zoom only. On Monday at 12 noon, please join us for Lunch and Learn with Rabbi Newberg. This program is also Zoom only. Next Friday, Shabbat services will begin at 6:30. Looking a little bit ahead, please join us on Sunday, June 5th at 10 a.m. for our Shavuot festival service. This special service is also the confirmation for our 10th graders and includes Yisker. And finally, MLRT Move is back. You've all been waiting, I know. And please join us on June 7th for a fabulous tour of Philadelphia's historic Jewish quarter. Tickets are available on our website and by calling the office. And for more information for all our programs, you can always check the bulletin and online. We extend a special mazel tov to Caroline Kozloff, Matthew Johnston, and Emery King, who will celebrate their B'nai Mitzvah on Saturday. And Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom.
I'd just like to very quickly echo our gratitude. Andy, we miss you. We know you're watching. But to Julia Bukanevich, now it took me 2 years to learn how to say Bukanevich, and to Mark Sobel, who both jumped in yesterday. And it seems like we've been doing this for a really long time together, so thank you both. And to the incredible voices of our choir, voices from our past and our present, it was really very special. So I know you've been sitting for a long time. I'll make this very brief. Rabbi Straus, could you join me for a moment? Pardon me. We have a couple of final gifts for you. Unfortunately, our Cantor Emeritus, Cantor Portnoy, could not be with us tonight. But the many years that you and Cantor Portnoy were partners here at MLRT were cherished by Cantor Portnoy, and the work you did together was holy and important to the congregation. Although he is not physically here, Cantor Portnoy wrote what will be our closing song in honor of the occasion of your retirement. Commissioned for you in celebration of your 24 years of service, this piece is a blessing, wishing you only goodness as you enter this next chapter. We had the piece framed. Sorry, still in the plastic. Picked it up today. And as you can see, the members of our choir have written messages, thank you, have written messages to you all along the matting. We hope that this will be a treasured gift to you always, as you will remain a treasured gift to each of us.
And, yep, you can leave it here. Yeah, I got it. And one more gift. For those of you who have spent time in academic circles, you might be familiar with the concept or the gift of a Festschrift. A Festschrift is typically an academic acknowledgement and celebration of one's life's work in a given field. As a rabbi, as you heard Rabbi Straus speak so eloquently before, a rabbi's work spans many different arenas. And so it is certainly far beyond the academic realm. And so there are several people who are joining us here tonight who have been asked to contribute to this volume. What you will receive tonight is the preliminary volume because, as you also probably know, deadlines are sometimes not deadlines. And so there will be a more permanent and bound volume for your reading pleasure in the future, but in the meantime, you can get started. And so what I am calling your Festschrift, which is contributions from your congregation, from your clergy partners across the board, and from your interfaith partners. So thank you.
We end with this final song, commissioned and written by Cantor Portnoy in your honor, this final blessing for you tonight.
It's also found on the service card you got on the way in the program.
Baruch atah b'vo'echa, Baruch atah b'tzeitecha, Bruchim habayim b'shalom. Blessed may you always be.
always go from strength to strength. And we wish you always shalom and Shabbat shalom to all.
Shabbat shalom. You can file through the back.
Please join us for Oneg in the Hausen Auditorium directly across from the Mina.
How's your granddaughter? Is she doing well?
We've got a third on the way.
You have a third?
Coming in June. Yes.
Wait, which is the one that's Jordan's age? Just like a few days. Harper. Is she doing well?
Yeah, she's fantastic. And then there's a little Zoe who's like, and Zoe is like, I guess she's almost 3. Yeah, she's an August baby.
Okay.
And the third one is another girl.
So wait, is Zoe Harper's sister or is it?
Yeah, Zoe is Harper.
Zoe's Harper, okay.
Traveling? Thank you. This is very cool. That's because you don't make it obvious. I was telling Sarah that I used to take 3 years to get a new house in the garden and 25 horses. Oh my God, I was nervous wreck. Make sure they don't die. Like, even I, but you know what? Yes, we're doing lunch. Yes. We're doing lunch. No, I'm not hungry. So nice of you to come look at the picture. What was the 40 minutes. Peter Clutch Coffee. Service. You're here. Thank you. Take the mask. We have to get to each other. Yes. Oh my God. It's such a good song. I didn't know that she was. No! Yeah, well, you know what she did? You still got it. She sang for me at St. John's. She sang a Bruckner piece. Wrote this Tuesday, and she was only like 6 but I do the best. And she said, well, I'm studying right from high school. Can I sit up? And I said, sure. I said, man, I said, you're good. You are just a natural. And she's really, I could have done it, but I didn't, you know, one piece I never facilitated that Leonard Cohen piece, the anthem. You know, like, oh, sight reading time, okay. Really good talking down. I don't know. I kind of are so good. So, not with this actually busier than I've been really busy. Yeah. But I still definitely Is he okay? That's the big news I got today. I'm going to go to Edinburgh. And my picture right up front. God, he looks like man. Oh my God. He has like matured in the night. It's like, is that a drawer? Yeah. It looks like his bar mitzvah. Wait. Oh no. I love that. Can you come to my house this year? Nice. I'll see you then. She's like higher and I sent like a couple of friends her way. She's like trying to get us used up again. Yeah. And she told me she wanted me to can't find a good alto. She went to alto and she'll find another soprano. But I sent an alto her way. So like, you know, I'll sing whatever. I'm not partial. You know, if she makes me sing tenor that year, like, I'll sing tenor. Oh, I have a great song. This is 2010, so this is my 12th year. It's going to be my 12th high holiday. Isn't that wild? Were you hired? Yeah. But we decided to soprano, right? And then the Morrows, who already knew me, they taught me. We're like, oh, she's bespoke, because I think Dorito was that. I was like, Andy, what am I this year? Oh, you're over there today.